All right. Hello, and welcome back to the PatORG podcast, Name Pending. I'm here with my lovely co host, Nico from season 22. I am Sarah, also from season 22, and we're very, very excited today to have on a very special guest, the winner of season 23, Camp PatORG. She was also named Player of the Season. She was in half of the best duo of the season, had the best move of the season, and was responsible for the worst move of the season. Please welcome in Clara. Clara, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, Nico, I know you're very excited to have Clara here too because you had her drafted first in both of your drafts this season. So this must be a really nice moment for you too.
Yes, we love a redemption arc after my less successful actual time playing. So I will take the wins where I can get them. So thank you, Clara. And as you've all mentioned, I'm really happy to be here and happy to be speaking with you.
Awesome. So, Clara, preseason, it was really fun to read through the sort of the preseason questions that you were asked, and I believe this is your first ever org, is that correct?
It is my first ever org. I had never heard of an org until Pat slid into my DMs on Reddit, and I still really did not understand what an org was until like halfway through.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of us have that same origin story. Like Pat just has a way of convincing random people on the internet to do something they've never heard of before. But you know what? It worked out for you, and I think it's so impressive that not only were you able to do well and have a great mark on the season, you actually won. So that's amazing. So I don't know if you came in expecting to win something you didn't know anything about, but can you talk a little bit about your expectations coming into the org versus what the reality ended up being?
Yeah, I really had no concept of what I was getting myself into. Um, Like, really none. Like, in once we got assigned to our cabins and, like, the game started, I was asking people, like, "Have you done one of these before? Can you explain it to me? Because help." Um, so, I love Survivor. I'm a big Survivor fan. So I know Survivor, and so my loose goal was to make it to Merge. Not long after Merge was my 30th birthday, so my secondary goal was to make it to my birthday. I really did not think I had any chance of winning going in, but was very pleasantly surprised to be here.
Oh my gosh,
Yes,
thank
and a
you.
happy
Yeah.
belated,
Yeah, happy
happy belated
belated.
birthday for that.
I
Especially that's a
know.
big one.
I love
So
that
that's
you
Thank
won
you.
as
really
a
cool.
member of the 30 and over crowd. I love that representation for us. I'm 33, so I totally get that as being a huge
Well,
accomplishment when there's a lot of young people who play in orcs.
and the crazy thing is that my birthday was the day of the Nelson blindside. So
Yeah.
in
Ah.
every way, I should have gone home that day, but,
Well,
but I
this is the
didn't.
thing.
Wow.
Last season, we actually see Brit go home on her birthday, and me and Sarah had been like, I hope this does not happen this season. So I'm
Right.
so glad you got through that vote because that would have been horrible to have happened back to back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna be sad, but luckily Nelson, or Ari did not play his idol.
Yes, one of the
Right.
big postseason reveals. Um, okay, so pregame you had said that your strategy essentially was to be as strong as you could be in comps, but mostly rely on social connections and use that to get you further in the game. Reading that back, like that to me seems very true to the type of game you played. Do you assess that the same way?
Yeah, I didn't even remember what I said I was gonna do, but I feel I feel like that's pretty on point.
You also mentioned that you're like a huge Survivor fan. So like how do you like sort of rate your like familiarity with the game? Like are you like watched all the seasons? Like how familiar would you say you are?
Um, so I'm pretty familiar, I'd say. I'm not a day one fan.
Gotcha.
I
Same here.
I had a lot of issues with insomnia in college, and Prime has so many seasons of Survivor, so I would like put them on while I couldn't sleep, And then eventually I realized it was making my insomnia worse because I was like hooked and didn't want to go to sleep because I wanted to watch the end of the episode. Um, I think the first season I watched live was like Heroes, Healers, Hustlers, Homeboys, whatever that season was. Um, and
That's
then
so
now
cool.
I've
That was mine too.
Oh, awesome. Well, now I've seen all the seasons. So I've gone back and watched all of them, and I've watched all of them live since that one. But I have a horrible memory, so like I can't like tell you everything like off the top of my head, but like I think it's really fun. I think the like social strategy side is what drew me in. And that probably makes sense with how I played.
Yeah. So you seem to make some good social connections early on Chippewa, and early on also the campfire twist was introduced. So what did you make of that when you first heard of it, and how did that impact your game from the beginning really until the merge?
Yeah, so I definitely bonded really quickly with Jeffrey and Daniel, and Joe, but to a like slightly lesser extent. Um, but the three of us were all like pretty tight. The four of us really all were pretty close. Campfire was like very intimidating at first because it's just so many new people. Um, I am introverted, so a lot of strangers is like a lot for me to take in, and small talk is really hard for me. So starting from nothing and just kind of like trying to build a bond with someone with nothing and like nothing to go off of is not my strong suit. So originally it was like kind of intimidating, but during the swaps, um, I think like that's when it was most helpful for me because it was a chance for me to like talk to the people I actually had trust in, and it like gave me a chance to kind of like talk out my thoughts and like talk out my feelings in a safe space because I never really felt safe on either of my swaps. Like my true my true heart was with my original Chippewas, and I didn't get to see very much of them during the swaps up until merge. So that was very helpful for me because it gave me a safe space to like talk about strategy, to talk about like what I'm thinking, to talk about what I'm feeling, and to just feel like a genuine relationship. Whereas during the swaps, I kind of felt like I didn't really have genuine relationships with anyone who was on my tribe.
We did see that sort of Chippewa sort of like brand for you like come through from the beginning, and it was a nice theme throughout. You end up being on the Chippewa tribe every single iteration, being the only person to kind of have a consistent tribe throughout. So I thought that was a really cool thing, and especially good considering like how you felt about your tribe at the beginning. Um,
Yeah, I loved my original tribe. And I gave everyone tours when they came to the new cabin. Um, I was like Chippewa house mom.
and I'm curious, when the game sort of starts and you come out of the marooning stage, who is the first person you speak to through DMs? And did you initiate it, or was someone messaging you?
Oh, wow. I don't know. It would not have been me messaging someone. It would have been someone else messaging me. And I would guess it was my guess is it was Jeffrey, the
Right.
little social butterfly that he is. But I actually don't know.
That's fair enough. I remember for me, I remember just because it was happening right from the get-go, and I was like, okay. And I'm the same sort of person. I didn't think to message people until a couple of people had messaged me, and I triggered them in my mind to think, okay, I need to be doing this too. So I was wondering if there was anyone that
Mhm.
you, I guess, thought that you wanted to specifically reach out to, like from early feels of getting like good vibes from anyone. Like who early on did you kind of have an eye on? That like this person, I think I'm gonna get along with.
Yeah, I think I pretty immediately was talking to Joe, Daniel, and Jeffrey, like all simultaneously, pretty quick. Um, and I clicked with all three of them like the first day. Uh, so they're probably who I clicked with initially. Jimmy, I talked to a little bit. Kay, I talked to a little bit, but I definitely just clicked better with the other three.
Yeah, you seem to be in a pretty good social position in that first tribe. I don't think we were ever worried that you would become a target had you guys gone to another tribal council. So I think the first time you really encountered some sort of adversity was after that first swap. Was it the Carolyn vote that you were blindsided first? And how did that sort of affect how you needed to play the game from that? Was it kind of like a wake up call? Did you feel like you had to shift anything in the way you were playing?
Yes. Well, so the first blind side was the swap, and that I got swapped to a
So
tribe
true.
with half green, half blue, and then your girl all alone in the middle. Um, I didn't know we threw that challenge also, but apparently we did. Um, don't love that, but yeah, no, it totally changed like how I approached the game, how I was playing. It was it was really hard for me in that tribe. Like I mentioned earlier, like I'm an introvert. I was going into a situation where there were these two groups that already knew each other, and I really didn't know them um, very well at all. I'd talked to a couple people in a campfire, but I wouldn't say I was close with anyone. And the person I'd talked to the most was Carolyn, and I didn't trust her at all because she was so all over the place. Um, so I had to totally change everything, and I had to like really hit the ground running and try and get to know all of these people. And the first tribal we went to, the Carolyn vote, was super hard for me because there was the greens. What I thought going in was the greens plus John on one side, and then the remainder of the blues maybe plus John on the other side, or maybe plus Leona. That's who I thought was on that side, was Leona. Um, so Jeff drops in my DMs and is like, "Hey, it's in your best interest to vote Matthew tonight." And like, I liked Matthew and thought I could work with him, and said like, "Hey, like, can we vote Carolyn instead?" Which I didn't know was as ironic as it was until later on. I get pulled into so I go to Leona and say like, "Hey, can we mix it up? Like, I really don't want a Matthew vote." She's like, "Yes, let's do it. Let's mix it up." And I got pulled into like a big voice chat with Carolyn, Leona, B, Matthew. And they're like, "Yeah, we're going to go Jeff. We're going to go Jeff." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Like, that makes sense." Um, I said, "Look, I really want to work with people who want to talk to me about the vote and like figure out what we should do together rather than me be given my marching orders." And from Jeff, it felt like he had given me my marching orders and wasn't really open to like talking about what are the other options? What else can we do? Um, and I felt like the blues were more willing to say like, "Oh, let's talk about the positives and negatives. Like, yeah, that sounds good. Let's do this." Um, and then we get to tribal, and I was blindsided by the people that I was voting for or voting with.
Mm-hmm.
The people that I didn't vote with had been honest with me. So I was just like, this is the worst situation I could possibly be in right now. I was trying to get one side on Carolyn, then got lied to by the other side, like stuck my neck out for Matthew just to have that side lie to me when I wanted a Carolyn vote. I just didn't think that they would flip on Carolyn. So
Yeah.
that really sucked.
Yeah, I wasn't as a parent to you guys, like as it was to, I guess, the specs early on, just like how like crazy Arawak was and like how convoluted everything was going on there and how complex like their relationships had gotten. Like I don't know how much that really came through to you guys and probably led to kind of that complicated vote situation there.
Yeah, I had talked with John some before that vote and had tried to lay some groundwork to pull in John and B and Matthew with the Greens against Carolyn. Like that's the plan I wanted to do, which I think everyone would have been on board with if I could have gotten everyone to like talk to me. But the Blues were just a mess. I mean, I'd asked John straight up, like, "Is there any chance of you ever like reconciling with any of the Blues?" And he said no, straight up, just no. And then the next day, he's in a secret vote that I'm not a part of with them. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are all lying to me, except for the people I voted for. Like, this isn't
That's
good.
wild. So, how did that kind of inform how you felt like you had to move forward?
I was really nervous. So I went to both sides and really played up um to the people who'd voted Carolyn. I played up, hey, I wanted to vote Carolyn, like, but I totally understand why you left me out. Like, you didn't know where my loyalties were. You didn't want Carolyn to find out. I totally understand. You didn't know me. You didn't know I can trust you. Hopefully, the way that I voted proves to you that you can trust me, that I'm with you. Like, I did vote for Jeff, just like we agreed to. I hope that you see that, you recognize that, and we can work together moving forward. Meanwhile, I'm going over to the green side and I'm like, well, I'm sorry. I, they just lied to me. I have no trust in them. I would like to build something with y'all because I don't feel like they value me. They lied to me. I am very sorry that I voted for you, Jeff, but I hope that we can work together in the future. I thought I was going with the numbers. Here's why I did it. I hope that we can build something. And I really didn't trust anyone at that point at all. But I knew I needed to get at least one side to trust me so that it wasn't an easy Clara vote the next time we went to tribal. And then we never went, which was great for me.
Yes, you end up going on a series of challenge wins, which I don't think I appreciated as much in real time or was aware of. So I think even just to kind of spoiler ahead, when you mention what a large proportion of your game kind of you attribute to the challenge thing, I now understand a lot more where that comes from. Whereas I think watching it as a spec at the time, I was thinking, wait, what? You're downplaying all these other elements that are so valuable in the game, but given that you end up not going back to tribal for the rest of the pre-merge is really just impressive. So yeah, I want to say props to you for that.
Yeah. Well, and the way I was looking at it was, um, the best thing you can do at merge is for everyone to feel like you're a number. And luckily that's what I was able to do. Even people who were a little hesitant with me, pretty much everyone felt like they could work with me at merge. If I'd gone to any of the tribals beforehand, I would have had to show my cards. I would have had to pick a side. Even in the second swap, but the third set of tribes, I still was in the middle and I still would have had to, draw a line in the sand and really show where my alliance was. So it was, we won, I think, 5 immunities in a row. And it was great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so do you think that did, like, not having to draw a line in the sand, do you feel like that changed the way you played as a result? Being able to basically, I guess, keep your options open?
So by the time we got to the second swap, the Chippewa round 3, by then I had built genuine relationships with Jeff and Marcus and Jacqueline, and I think I knew that that's where I wanted to kind of plant my flag and say, like, these are my people. I want to work with these people.
Mm-hmm.
The hard thing, for both swaps time, was that my allies were over on the other side in Arawak bonding with blues.
Mm-hmm.
So it left me in this very, like, weird position where I knew that they wanted there to be a purple alliance at merge, but I knew that I wanted there to be like a Christmas alliance at merge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was just kind of trying to play the middle and just really trying to build bonds with the blues, and it just never clicked with any of them after that. And I think it was from both sides. I think they could tell I was a little hesitant. I think I picked
Mm-hmm.
up on that vibe from them as well. And we just never really got off the ground. But it was, yeah, I know. I think it helped a lot that I didn't have to go to tribal at all, so that I could just kind of be in the middle, and, everyone thought they could pull in little Clara.
Yeah, and ultimately it does end up working out for you. I am curious, so following that blindside at the Carolyn vote, what was the kind of reception that the sort of old Arawaks or Blues, I should say, ended up giving you? Did they try and sort of smooth things over and make you believe that everything was good and maybe just didn't translate? Or what kind of was that like behind the scenes?
So I would say the first like 12 hours afterwards, they were so friendly, so welcoming, so apologetic. And then it just dropped off with really all of them. I kept some conversation going with Matthew. I kept some conversation going with Leona. She wasn't blue, but she was on that boat. I kept some conversation going with John. Um, B, I just never clicked with. It frankly blew my mind later in the game to hear everyone just, just talk about how like sweet and genuine and just wonderful and personable she was, because we just never got there. And I'm sure she would say the exact same thing about me, because I did have very close allies. I did have people who would, say the same types of things about me. And she and I just we never clicked. We never got that. So I would say they all tried really hard for like 12 hours to get me back on their side. But then after that, it was nothing. And it became painfully obvious that they didn't really value me. They didn't really care to pull me back in. They did still view me as just like a number that they could tell what to do or not. And I didn't feel like they valued me in the way that I felt like they should at that point.
I think that's super fair, and obviously, I feel like you probably ended up picking up on the right sort of vibes, and I feel like yeah, you probably made the right call. You mentioning B is interesting because we did see as specs a huge part of the game that B sort of utilized quite well was these sort of voice chats, and I was wondering, is that something that you were doing yourself with other people, or was it mainly like via the regular sort of DM way of communicating?
I was much more in DMs. I'm not a huge like phone call person. Um, it's just not so much my thing.
Mm-hmm.
If someone asked to voice chat, like I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, like yeah, we'll figure out a time, we can do that. B and I never had a voice chat until the Joe vote. That was the first time she and I spoke to each other one on one through voice chat. Um, so yeah, no, I handled more through just DMs.
Another,
But
I think.
that is one of the biggest things I would do differently in the future, is to put more screenshots of DMs in my confessional, because I recognized it was a little like, obviously I didn't know what I was doing because this was my first org, so I didn't really understand like how spectators saw the
Mm-hmm.
game and like what they were privy to, um, and like how they were able to get information. So probably a lot of the things that I like did or like said, people are like, wait, what? Why? How? And I could have done a better job explaining that by like letting y'all have a little more insight there.
Yeah, the confessionals are really like a major source of information for us, especially for when it comes to the DM conversations, because we can't see those at all, obviously. So we rely on you to give like summaries or screenshots, like you said. So yeah, those are helpful, and they can actually like kind of like color the way we're looking at the game based on like who's giving us the most information at any given time. Another big thing for you in the pre-merge, you were separated, of course, from Jeffrey, your kind of day one ally. And losing him was tough on you. He stayed in your trust rankings even into the merge. So, would you say that was like a big moment for you and how you figured you were gonna have to play post merge once you saw he got voted out?
Yeah, huge. He stayed in my trust rankings through my final trust rankings. He stayed in that 0 spot. Daniel joined him at some point, but he was my day one. I mean, he was the only person that I was 100% with the entire game. Daniel and I were 100% at merge, but I wasn't 100% with Daniel before that. Um, we got there, but that isn't how I felt earlier. It was a huge blow. It made me very sad. Like I legitimately was just like a little hopeless and like very down for a day or two, because he was my day one. Like he was my person. Like he was my sanity in the game. So losing him was really, really hard, especially when I was in a different tribe and I couldn't do anything to help him. Um, but weirdly, in hindsight, I feel like I did better without him than I would have if he'd stayed in the game. I don't think I could have pulled Jeffrey away from Nelson onto what eventually became the Swifties 6 with the Greens in the way that I was able to pull Daniel and Joe. So I think it hurt, but I think it actually was better for my game long term for him to not be there. And I didn't see that at the time, but like in hindsight, I think I would have been in a worse situation if he'd stayed in at merge.
That's a very astute point, and I think you're probably correct. So once you do get to the merge and you sort of have this pro Christmas type alliance agenda, the Swifty Six start to come together. How much do you see yourself as a driving factor in creating those early merge alliances and how they dictated sort of the rest of the merge for you?
Huge. I really do feel like Daniel and I controlled, between the two of us, we controlled the first several votes after merge. Like probably the first 3 or 4. I'm not sure who those people were. Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah,
Yeah, Sarah,
John,
John, yeah.
Jeff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was Nelson after Jeff? No, Matthew,
Mm-hmm.
and then Nelson. So yeah, I think between Daniel and I, like we controlled the all 5 of those votes pretty much. Um, I wouldn't say that I single-handedly had all of that control in any way, shape, or form. I think the fact that we were cross-aligned, that we had people in different corners really helped us. Um, but I do think that I had a lot of influence in what happened for the first like 5 votes after the merge. I lost it a little after that, but
Mm-hmm.
through that, I felt like I was pretty in control. There was always risk. I never felt 100% confident. I never felt like, oh, yeah, I got this. Like, I can just go to sleep because I'm good. But I did feel like I had some power, but not everyone realized it at that point.
Can you talk about the Jeff Blindside in particular and sort of how that was the culmination of you and Daniel playing this double agent game that got some recognition in the postseason awards? Why was that important to happen when it happened? And who sort of suggested that between the two of you, and what sort of went into pulling that off from your perspective?
Yeah, so we made the Swifties 6 right at the beginning of merge, and within that, I had the core 4, which was me, Jacqueline, Jeff, and Marcus. So me and the Greens. Um, we knew the second we made that, we couldn't go to the end with that 6, right? Like Jeff, Jacqueline, and Marcus were picking Jeff, Jacqueline, and Marcus over the 3 of us any day. Joe probably was on the bottom of that. Daniel was next, and then me. We all so I genuinely thought Jeff had played before. I just found out today that this was his
Oh,
first org, but he did know a lot about Survivor. And so we thought he was a risky game player. He did kind of seem to dictate Jacqueline and Marcus's moves a little bit. I do believe they had agency in all of that, but I think he was the louder of the 3 of them. So he was the one who was more likely to um, kind of push his opinion on the other 2. And I also knew I had cast a vote against him, and I didn't know whether he harbored that against me or not. I hoped he didn't. I did feel like we had mostly buried the hatchet, but I didn't know if in the back of his mind he somewhere was thinking like, oh, it's gonna be sweet revenge when I eventually turn on her and cast a vote and send her out. So Daniel and I always knew we would have to kick out one of the Swifty 6 before the final 6. Um, that vote happened at 9. So Daniel is who suggested doing it that vote. I was initially hesitant and said, I think it's too soon. There's way too many people on the other side. I think that you're really screwing over like me and Marcus and Jacqueline if we take a swing at Jeff now. And he said, I'm not going to push it. If it's not what you're comfortable with, we'll figure out a way to do something else. And I said, okay, cool. So we kept talking about it. We kept talking it through. And then I suddenly realized, okay, we're sitting at 5-4. We're sitting at 9. I have the core 4. I need to keep Jacqueline and Marcus as my allies while taking out Jeff. I need Jeff gone, but I need Jacqueline and Marcus to really not know that I was in on it. We had 4 votes at that point, including Jeff. The other side had 5. So that was the last point in the game that I could 100% trust that they had the votes to get Jeff out. So that was the last time I could be complicit in the Jeff vote without actively being involved. And so that's what ultimately pushed me to kind of say like, yeah, let's do it. And luckily the other side had kind of already wanted a Jeff vote. So it was easy for Daniel to be like, hey, Joe and I want to jump ship and vote with y'all against Jeff. We hate Jeff. Let's go vote for Jeff. So the timing just kind of worked really perfectly. And again, it's something in hindsight, I didn't realize how much of a threat people felt like I was at that point, because I genuinely did not understand why. I never wanted immunity. I didn't really have that many friends. At least I didn't feel like it. I really didn't feel like I was that big of a threat, but everyone else was saying, she's such a threat. She's such a threat. We have to get her out. So it, in hindsight, was a very good thing for me to lower my threat level, because I think that's one thing that let me like slip through a couple of the next votes, was that they were like, oh, we just cut off one of her legs. She's less of a threat now. We don't have to worry about her for a while.
Yeah, I do think that is actually a very good point, and it's good to get the insight from you about the sort of timing coming out for you, where you felt like that was the only real chance you could kind of pull this off while still, you know, securing the votes, while being able to convince Marcus and Jacqueline, who at this point you have quite high in your trust rankings, with Jeff towards the bottom. We do see you mention you don't know if in your projected boot list, getting rid of Jeff is too soon. I think even several rounds later, but obviously, as you've said, this ultimately ends up being the move. I notice in your boot list you end up having Jacqueline and Daniel as the people you want to take to final 3, and it kind of mirrors your trust rankings around that time. But I was just wondering what motivated you wanting to maybe take them to the end.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel and I talked about it. So I never had any like, hey, this is a final 3, this is a final 2. Like I had people that I said like, hey, I really want this to be the group I end with, or like I want to make it to the finals with you. But I never had any like formal like, we are a final 2. But Daniel and I had conversations where we said, genuinely, I want to be sitting with you at the end. And I had full intentions of taking Daniel to the end, whether or not that cost me the game. He was my person from the merge on, and I really wanted to like whoever won, and I really wanted to be like happy that that winner was the person who won. And at that point, Jacqueline and Daniel were my kind of top people. They were the people I felt closest with, and they were the people like I felt the most comfortable with winning.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really fair. I mean, ultimately, we don't see a cash prize at the end of this. As much, I'm sure, as it feels great to win, I'm sure there's a big element of just wanting to have that satisfaction at the end, that even if you don't win, realistically, you've not lost like an opportunity for money. And so if you can get someone that you like the win at the end, then I'm sure that's a really nice feeling. I do want to correct myself saying that I was looking at earlier notes, and you do end up subbing out at this point Jacqueline for Marcus in your top 3. So then what was your, maybe, if you can remember, your sort of thing that was going in your mind that kind of had him sort of edge her out in this spot?
Yeah, so it's funny. Daniel and I, part of when we were talking about like being like wanting to make us be end together, he made a comment of like, if we were playing for money, I would not take you in a million years. But since we're not, I would take you. So as things kind of dwindled down, after the Jeff vote, Marcus was much more forgiving to Daniel and Joe of like, it's a game. I understand why they did it. I'm open to mending fences. Jacqueline harbored a little more resentment towards them. And I didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize Daniel's chances of making it to the end. So Marcus was more open to working with Daniel. And because of that, I moved him a little higher because I felt like me, Daniel, and Marcus were a stronger trio than me, Daniel, and Jacqueline would be.
Yeah, I think I remember it was at that point. I think Jacqueline won immunity around then, and she was also debating taking the shot at Jeff. So I think she was like afterwards, she was a little frustrated that it happened without her because she just had decided it was too soon. So the fact that it happened and she wasn't part of it, I think might have contributed to her frustration if I remember correctly. But that's kind of funny that it was being debated at the same time. You also talked about in your final tribal speech that sort of toward the mid-merge after these first few votes, you started to lose a little bit more control, and you attributed it partly to maybe not, or maybe underestimating some of the self-interest of the other players, including Joe and Marcus in particular. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that evolved and changed your gameplay moving forward?
Yeah, so I underestimated Joe. I figured it out at some point, but I really believed that he wanted to go to the end with me and Daniel. I didn't realize how good he was socially. I think that there was a point that he played a little fast and loose socially, and it caught up to him, particularly after the Jacqueline vote. I think I like made a comment to him of like, wow, like that was really close because I wasn't supposed to know it was a split going in, but I did. And I think it was the Jacqueline vote. I'm not sure. But he at some point like lied to me and said like, "Oh, I didn't know you were getting votes." And I knew he knew, but he didn't know that I knew that he knew. And it was just like a little too hard of going out of his way. And on the Daniel vote, he tried to like stir up feelings of ill will between me and Daniel on Daniel's way out, which didn't really make sense to me. But yeah, no, we underestimated Joe. We really thought that he would just kind of like fall in line as our third, and he was playing a much more individual game. Marcus, Marcus was a lot closer with B in particular than I realized. That became evident during the Jacqueline vote when he was in on the split between me and Jacqueline, and I don't think I knew before just how close they were. So I was, picking up on certain vibes, but there's some that I didn't realize. I do think I recognized Joe as a threat. I just wish that I had won the immunity when Daniel went home because I think we could have gotten Joe out that vote. But I was one question behind him and came in second, as is my
Yeah, as is tradition for
my
you at
way.
this point. Yeah. So Daniel and Joe end up going out back to back, and it was weird kind of watching that come together. I think we hear from B first that she wants to push to get Joe out over you at Final Five, and we're in shock. And then we get like sort of like a little confessional from you where you're like, I think I might be staying. So, from your perspective, who was bringing this information to you? How much did you believe them? How much input were you giving to everyone else left in the game to make your case to stay at Final Five?
I thought I had no chance. I totally screwed up that challenge. I got the wrong command going in the final. So I accidentally, like, it was like final 5 immunity. And in the final channel, I got messed up and started doing 5. And so I got like 20, like, I got to like 18, I think, in the wrong word before realizing it, and just knew that I wasn't winning. And I really I finished that challenge. I went in my confessional and said, well, that sucks. I'm going home. I didn't think I had any chance at all whatsoever. I talked to Marcus. Marcus says, yeah, I think actually we might have a chance at a Joe vote. And I'm like, what? Why on earth would they do that? But yes, please. B messages me and says like, hey, can we chat later? And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, sure. Let's have our first voice chat in the final 5. Let's go wild. And I talked with Andrew a little bit as well. I think that, as I mentioned, I think Joe played a little too aggressively on the social side and it caught up to him. I think he had a phenomenal social game, but I think he either got a little bored or a little cocky or a little tired because he didn't sleep on immunity or on tribal days. Some combination of that. He had a couple slip up where people were able to cross-reference more easily and like figure out that this person who was like, oh, I'm so nice and so great and so fun, was actually lying to them and not being open about it. Even after votes, like would continue to kind of like carry through lies in a way that felt personal. I went into the Joe vote having personal feelings against Joe. And that's the only time I had real personal feelings, other than the Matthew like misogyny incident earlier, which like was not game related at all. But this is the first time that like game moves had made me feel personal feelings. And I think Joe had triggered some personal feelings with B, and I think Joe had triggered some personal feelings with Andrew as well. And that worked out for me, that we all kind of felt personally hurt by him.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just as shocked as y'all were that I was allowed to stay in at that point. I thought I had no chance. But luckily, they all wanted a Joe vote. So I did a little work with Andrew. B came in fully saying, like, I want to vote for Joe. And I said, that's great. I agree. And like I talked with Marcus a little bit, but I think Marcus would have gone with the tide if they had said Clara.
I do want to say I found it really commendable how you handled the whole misogyny thing that you mentioned. I feel like it's a very difficult thing, especially not knowing who said what or sometimes where it's really come from. But I feel like the way you dealt with it was just so mature. And again, even just the way you kind of segued to allow people to kind of bring back some levity with sort of your, I think it was favorite animal question as well, was just, I think speaks volumes to how you kind of were able to speak to people and kind of get people on side. We obviously see earlier in the season you win joint funniest as well. So I think that kind of two-pronged thing you had going for you just kind of speaks a lot about why you end up doing so well in this game.
Yeah, thank you. I want to also like commend Matthew on his handling of the situation as well. I was like blissfully unaware that there was anything going on. I obviously do not want anyone misinterpreting what I say to imply that someone's behaving in a misogynistic way. I had no issues. I had never had any issues with Matthew. I don't know what I said that triggered that, or if it was just a total misunderstanding. But I really, really appreciate the way Matthew handled it, because he came in my DMs and just said, hey, I heard these rumors. I want to apologize if I ever did anything that unintentionally hurt you, because I never meant to do anything. And he also, said like, please tell me what I did so that I can be better in the future. And I think that takes a really big person to like take that approach as well. And then I just felt like I wanted to squash it. I didn't want it to be DMs, people talking here, people talking there. I just felt like it was a better way to handle it, to just kind of be upfront and say, I'm sorry if something I said got misinterpreted. I never meant to hurt anyone. I'm sure no one ever meant for me to feel hurt by feeling like this rumor's going around about me, but I want it to be done. And then I also knew, like, well, I really just like put a damper on the whole cabin vibe. Let's just mix it up because it's weird for anyone else to say anything at this point because it would seem insensitive. What's your favorite animal? Mine's a crab.
Yeah, I'll echo what Nico said. We really commended the way you handled it in particular, and to hear that that's how Matthew handled it privately with you is really nice to hear. In a season with very little drama, very few interpersonal type issues, it was honestly a very small deal, and everyone seemed to handle it well. So I'm glad you guys were all able to move on from that in a way that didn't negatively impact anyone's game. I hope. Another thing you had sort of touched on earlier when you were talking about the final five vote is you had checked in with Andrew, and so I was kind of curious, what was your relationship with Andrew like during the post merge, and B, what was your perception of who he was close to, who his allies were, and did you want to work with him more closely than you were, or maybe we didn't see what was going on? I'd love some more like a better look at your relationship in general.
Oh, Andrew. Andrew's a tough nut to crack. He's a very um I just don't even know what words. He knows what he wants. He's very vocal. He's very honest. Um so we actually were on the second swapped tribe together. So we were back together on Chippewa 3. And since we'd been on original Chippewa together, I tried to, kind of build back up a relationship. And he said, hey, like I want to work with people I like. I like you. I like Sarah. I like Sarah. I like Nelson. I want us to work together. Um, I was really hit and miss with Andrew. We would go days without talking, and then we would kind of talk, and then sometimes I would get like sentences from him that I just really didn't know what he was saying. So we very often had kind of miscommunications where I didn't understand what he was saying. He didn't understand what I was saying. Um, I tried to keep that door open, and I knew he valued honesty. After the Daniel vote, so during the Daniel vote, I knew that votes were coming to me and votes were coming to Daniel. I knew that it was going to be Daniel, and I couldn't cast a vote for him. He was my best friend in the game. Again, he was my sanity in the game. So I threw a vote on Andrew. We were trying down to the very last minute to get Marcus to vote Andrew with us at that point, but Marcus just wouldn't do it because he wanted to play an individual game and not just fold to what Daniel and I wanted. Which, props to him for not doing that, but it still made me mad. But Andrew, after that vote, said, oh, I don't know who cast the vote for Andrew. And I just said, well, I did. And I said, I figured you and I had enough of a relationship that you would forgive me. I don't want to be, I knew you weren't going home. I just really didn't want to have to vote for Daniel because I was close with him. And I think he appreciated that. So we always had somewhat of a relationship. We never had issues, but I also wouldn't say we were super close.
Mm-hmm.
I knew he was close with B.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew he was close with like Nelson when Nelson was in the game. And I knew like Joe and Daniel both had working relationships with him, but I knew he would pick B over me any day of the week. Yeah, I haven't gone back and looked at his confessionals, but probably his trust rankings would be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned his relationship with B. That was one of the things I was curious to know if everybody else was kind of aware of how close they got. And from a spectator's perspective, I think a lot of us didn't expect him to vote B out at the final four. But before we get to that, I just wanted to bring that up quickly. But the final four, the final immunity challenge was so super intense. I think both you and B knew it was kind of like a do or die for you. So can you walk us through like all like the range of emotions you were going through with all those crazy questions that Pat was throwing at you?
Oh, it was so many emotions. Yeah, I went in knowing if I didn't win, I was going home. Which I had felt that way for several immunity challenge previously, but I really knew at that point, if you don't win this, you are out. I thought maybe there was a chance if Marcus won it that I would have a shot, but I figured it was probably going to come down to me or B. And I think B and I even talked about that when we were talking about the Joe vote. I think we even said we're probably going to go to Final Four. URI is probably going to win Final Four immunity, and we're probably going to send the other one out the door. Just because we at that point felt like in that Final Four, she and I were the strongest, and like she and I were the ones who were the biggest contenders to win. And we also weren't working together, so I had no reason to bring her, and she had no reason to bring me. But that immunity challenge was crazy. It was wild. I had so many feelings. I think she got off to like a 3-1 lead at one point, maybe. And I was just sitting there like, I'm done. I'm out. This is useless. Let her just win all the next 10 so I don't have to suffer anymore.
Oh no.
Being a little melodramatic. But I stuck with it. My approach was go with a gut answer as quickly as you can and hope that it's right, because I knew I wasn't going to find the answer the quickest. So my gut was just probably 4 of my points were just completely random guesses.
Wow. Okay. That's really bold strategy, but it definitely paid off. You barely edge out B there. So just to go back to the point I was asking about before, were you surprised that Andrew was willing to vote B out there? Or were you also concerned, like a lot of the spectators were, of a possible fire making situation at final? Well, not concerned from an immunity perspective, but just from a game perspective, that could be a tie vote there.
Yeah, no, I really thought it was going to be a tie vote. I talked to Marcus and I said, "Hey, I would like a B vote. I feel like B is the biggest threat. I think we should go for her." In my mind, B and Andrew were both going to vote Marcus. I honestly, to keep Marcus, if he'd said, let's both throw our votes on Andrew and send the 2 of them to fire making, I would have done it. I probably wouldn't if this was like Real Survivor for $1 million. But like I said earlier, I wanted the person who wins to be someone that I liked and I was happy with winning. It was frustrating to me for B to talk so highly of her social game and to talk so lowly of mine, when I feel like I gave the same effort to her she gave me, and we just didn't click. And like no hard feelings against us not connecting the way she did with many other people, the way I did with many other people, but it did hurt to feel like she was so down on, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you value my vote? When I kind of felt the same way about her, of like,
Mhm.
okay, well, same question to you. You're not in final tribal council, but same to you. So I was surprised. I was very surprised, but I talked to Andrew right after the immunity, and he said, like, who do you want to go? And B had also messaged me and said, like, are you voting for me? And I said, like, I haven't talked to Marcus yet, but probably I am. And you know, no hard feelings. You would do the same to me. I just feel like you're the biggest threat. I have to try and get you out. And yeah, no, Andrew said the same thing essentially of, yeah, B is a huge threat. Andrew definitely identified the social game as his strongest
Mm-hmm.
like portion. And I think he looked at it that his main strength was social. B's main strength was social. He would have more of an edge over me because I had to play more like challenge and strategy and less social. But I was surprised when he initially said, "Yeah, I'm voting B." It's like, great, yeah, cool, me too.
Okay. Another small thing, we don't have to like linger on this too long, but we were very entertained by the rites of passage at Final Four. And I'm curious, did you go into that with any sort of strategy, since you guys decided to ultimately do that in the tribal setting where the jurors could see it? Was there any sort of pandering or information you wanted to make sure the jurors saw during the rites of passage?
No. I contemplated making the reveal about the Jeff vote there. I ultimately decided against it. Because I ultimately decided, like, this isn't about me. Like, this is about the people who played with us. Y'all saw a lot of mine were pretty short. If I didn't know someone, I said, you seemed great, but I didn't get to know you. I'm not the pandering type. That's just like not really my thing. I think when I try, if I ever did, it would come across fake. And that's just not me. So I really didn't pander in those. I think I was pretty honest. Like I said, I did consider dropping the information that I knew about the Jeff vote, but then ultimately decided, no, I'm gonna save that for final tribal.
One messy question that has just popped into my head that I know we said we weren't going to linger on, but what was your feelings on maybe how long it took? Because I do believe you had to be
Too long.
somewhere. Yeah. Okay.
Too long is how I felt that it went.
Yeah.
I thought that it would be much shorter. I honestly got pretty annoyed, especially knowing that like we're gonna be able to talk to these people in like 24 hours. Like, um, that really is when I realized, like, wow, like B actually really had like strong social connections with these people in a way that they had much more personal relationships than I had. I mean, most of my relationships were really game based and then developed personally from there. And she just kind of was able to build personal relationships with people, and that's great. That's something I admire. That's not me, but it went way too long. Like
Yeah, we were all like,
way too
didn't
long.
Clara say she has to be somewhere like during this time? I felt so bad, but yeah.
Well, no. So I had a meeting that went on during it, but luckily, I think B was typing out one single message to one person for the entirety of that
Oh my
meeting, so it
gosh.
was fine.
Okay, well, I'm glad that worked out.
Oh God.
Yeah, I would love to see rites of passage like come back as a tradition in future seasons. Maybe not to that length, because man, I remember I wanted to like take a nap and it was taking forever. I was like, I still want to watch this, but yeah, it was a long one. But anyway, okay, so yeah, the bees voted out at Final Four. You're in Final Tribal. It's amazing. You're there with Marcus and Andrew. Um, First of all, as when bees voted out, what are you feeling? Are your like honest chances of winning the game at that point? And what is your approach at Final Tribal? You do the Jeff vote reveal in your speech, I believe. But what else was important to you to get out during Final Tribal to any of the jurors?
Yeah, I really did feel like Marcus and I had equal stats um, going into final tribal, and I now know we did not have equal shots, but that he crushed it and I underperformed. um, I'm not super comfortable like bragging on myself. Like it's always something I have been bad at. Like year-end reviews at work, I am very uncomfortable like writing what I did and like trying to boast about myself. It's never been something I'm good at. So going in, I really felt like we were 50-50. I didn't feel like I had a lot of secured votes. I knew I had Daniels. I felt like I played a game that John respected. And when he was going out, he said, I will vote for you if you make it. So I felt like I probably had John's. And really past that, I felt like it was all up in the air. The biggest thing I wanted to kind of get through to people was that I knew what was going on a lot more than people thought I did. Like I said, Daniel and I really I was never surprised. I was never blindsided after the Carolyn vote. The Carolyn vote was the only vote that I went into and didn't know what the outcome was going to be within a vote or two. I knew who was going home every single time, except for the Carolyn vote. And I wanted people to know, okay, she played a much more active game than we realized. Like she didn't just get lucky over and over and over again, even though luck was a huge part of it. But I also had established strong enough relationships with Marcus and with Daniel that they went to bat for me to keep me. They felt like I was an important part of their game. So they tried to keep me when I couldn't protect myself. And also that I did have that kind of long term strategy of I need to get Jeff out. I need to do it in a way that I keep Jacqueline and Marcus because they're my second and third closest allies. So that was kind of what I wanted to get across, was that I was more active than it maybe appeared to other people in the game while we were in the game.
I think that's all very fair, and I definitely relate to the idea of not easily bragging about myself. So, with that in mind, do you feel like the answers you gave were always like reflections of the truth? Because definitely from Spec Lounge, and obviously we're not aware necessarily what your own perceptions of yourself are, so we're never sure if we thought you were downplaying it, maybe to well, for whatever reason. But do you feel like the answers you gave were a reflection of how you actually felt at the time?
Yeah, no, I definitely think that they were how I felt at the time. I think the Specs and Ponderosa were a lot higher on me than I was on myself,
Right.
um, which is like a nice thing to hear after the fact of like, oh wow, everyone thought I was doing so much better than I thought I was doing. But I thought I was honest. I think that probably my biggest issue in Final Tribal was like maybe I should have been a little more aggressive, but I I felt like I was honest the whole time.
I think that's really fair enough. One sort of hypothetical I have for you. So we do see a variety of different questions, a lot of sort of entertaining or like interesting and thought-provoking questions. What would you have looked for in? So I appreciate you kind of had the people that you liked, but say as a general juror, if hypothetically you do end up losing that final immunity, is there any sort of information you would have wanted to find out from the people there? So I guess B instead of yourself, or like what in general do you look for that you think you would want in a winner?
Agency is important to me. Um, I think it's likely Marcus would have had my vote, especially because he did have agency that I honestly wasn't even privy to throughout the last few votes. But I think B would have had a shot at it. I think it's pretty unlikely I would have voted for B. But I would have gone into tribal with Marcus as my front runner, but open to B and frankly open to Andrew. But I don't think he would have been able to sway me. So I think that's probably what I would have looked for is agency and like playing a part in your own game, not just being a follower, but like what's a move that you can take ownership of? What's something that you did that changed the course of the game? Like probably my questions would have been something along those lines.
Did any the final vote ends up being 7-2. Did that big of a gap in the vote surprise you based on how final tribal went? Were you getting the impression that you're performing well or not so well? And were any of the individual votes surprising to you at the end?
So the votes for Marcus were B and Jeff. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
No, neither of those really surprised me. I thought I had a shot at Jeff. I really didn't know. I felt like I had a good shot at winning. Um, I was like probably 60% confident by the time we were done that I had it. Because Joe had said, unless they do really well, Clara has my vote. Jacqueline had said, like, Andrew has no shot at my vote. I knew Daniel was behind me. I had a good feeling John was behind me. Um, and from like a couple other people, I just felt like, okay, I think I have a shot at these. Like, I really did feel like I was potentially going to get anyone's vote besides B. I pretty much knew I wasn't going to get B's. Um, she actually said the only thing during Final Tribal that like genuinely upset me. I got upset when she like asked something and I said like, well, I knew where every vote was the whole game. And she responded with, no, you didn't know about the Jeff vote. We blindsided you. And that made me mad because I'm like, why did I write a speech if you weren't going to read it, girl? Like, what was the point in me wasting all that time writing out this million word speech if you're not going to pay any attention to it?
I mean, that just is a compliment to how good your double agent job was, I think.
Well, right. But at that point, the double agent game was over. Like
Right,
we
right.
were being open and honest.
Yeah, I can
So yeah, I
understand.
don't know. I felt pretty good going into the vote reading of, I think it's probably me, but I didn't know. I really didn't know. I thought I could have anywhere from 2 votes to all but 1.
You mentioned that Marcus kind of surprised you and had more agency than you realized. Uh, Either that or anything beyond that. What were some sort of things that either came to light from your fellow finalists or jurors that maybe surprised you either in the questioning or the answers they gave?
That was really the only well, I didn't know about any of the, like, Daniel, Joe, Andrew drama, so that kinda surprised me because I didn't know there was beef there. Matthew's question surprised me because he told us to do something and then got mad when we did it. So
Right.
that was
I'm still confused about
surprising.
that as well.
So that surprised me. But yeah, no, I think that like really the only thing that, well, Andrew's confidence, frankly, surprised me. Probably the rest of you. Uh,
All right. Well, I mean, you pulled it out. You got the win. It's amazing. Like a lot of people were rooting for you for so long, especially since we were worried about you leaving a lot of the post merge, and Ponderosa was worried about you and rooting for you. So it's just like such a satisfying ending to have you come in there and pull out the 7-2 win, really decisive win. You get some really amazing postseason awards as well that recognize how strong of a game you played. Um, so is there anything else you want the specs to know about the game that you played? And also, since this was your first org, do you have any advice for newbies about how they should approach the game?
I, um, I was genuinely surprised. So I I have read like some people's confessionals. I read all of Ponderosa. And I think I'm gonna print it out and like keep it somewhere if I ever need like a self-esteem boost. But I was really pleasantly surprised by like the spec lounge. I haven't looked at like everything because that would take like a year of my life to catch up on. But I kind of went to a couple key like dates that I wanted to see the reaction to the Jeff vote. A couple things around there. I wanted to see how like Jeffrey was received when he got a voted out pre-merge. Um, it was actually like very nice to see a lot of love. Maybe just a smidge of dislike from Carolyn, which I don't really understand or know why she was rooting against me the whole game. But it was nice to kind of go and like not be bombarded with like a bunch of negativity. I feel like our season overall was pretty positive and friendly and uplifting, so that was great. But I guess my advice to people: one, put DM Snapchat screenshots, ugh, bleh, words, in your confessionals because I think that that would have provided more insight into like where my head was at and like I mean, some of my best acting was in DMs and y'all never got to see it. So that's a bummer. Um, but just be yourself and have fun. Don't take it too seriously. There's a lot of times I could have gotten down about the fact that I received 11 votes over the course of the merge or like tribals after merge. I think I got votes against me in like every vote post merge that I could have, except for one. So just like don't let stuff like that get you down. Like just have fun. It's a game. Try and make some friends, but like don't take it too seriously and be yourself.
That's amazing advice. Would you consider playing more orgs in the future, short term or long term?
100%, yes, I would play again. Not soon. Um, because it is a lot. It was very stressful. It was very fun, but it was really stressful. And I think I need like a little bit of a break. I think it would be fun to do like a Big Brother org because I also watch Big Brother and love that. But I definitely would play in the future, I can't do it so
Yeah,
soon
I don't blame
after.
you at all. Awesome. I think that's everything I had to ask. Nico, do you have any other questions?
No, I think we about covered it. Honestly, thank you so much, Clara, for giving us your time. It's really been so fun to talk to you. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say a big thank you from me.
Well, thank you, Nico, for believing in me from the very start
Thank you for delivering.
and being the only one to
Yes,
recognize the true glory that was the winner of the season.
me, I can spot them. Me and Sarah voted the first vote where I get blindsided.
Hmm.
The following three end up going home, the next three votes, and Sarah wins Player of the Season, so I know how to spot them.
So true, so true. Yeah,
Let's pretend it was all intentional. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah,
absolutely.
no, same for me. Pretend it was all
Yeah.
intentional.
You really did play a fantastic game. You were really, really fun to watch all season. So thank you for giving us like such good entertainment, such like satisfying gameplay all season. Yeah, it was really, really fun, and hopefully you're gonna stick around and watch season 24 as a spectator. It'll be really fun to have you in Spec Lounge.
Yeah, I definitely plan to spec. I think it'll be much calmer on this side. But this has been really fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time today. This is great to get some like extra insight and behind the scenes into your game. Because like you said, we didn't always get the full story from everyone's confessional. So this has been really fantastic. And yeah, Nico, you want to take us out?
Absolutely. So, thanks again. We may have some more of these coming out, so stay tuned. But for now, thanks for joining. Bye, everyone.
Bye.